the biggest rule in verticals is you can't be boring. The screen that they're watching this on is the same screen that their emails are coming in on, and they're 2 taps away from the rest of the world, you know? So your storytelling does have to be incredibly compelling. And as a storyteller, I feel like, you need to give them something that is worth their time.
Welcome to Off the Lot, the podcast for filmmakers building careers outside the studio system.
We're your hosts, Ken Kavatoff and Anthony Epp, and this is where we break down what it really takes to get indie films made.
Let's dive in.
Okay, and welcome back to Off the Lot. My guests today have done something nobody in Vancouver has actually done before. Steve Krammerer and Julie Bruns run Meat Productions, and they just made Beneath Crimson's Sails, which is a pirate-themed vertical microdrama. And they put it on the big screen at the Rio in what I guess would be called the first full theatrical screening of a vertical series in this city's history. Steve is an award-winning Vancouver writer, director, actor, hyphenated filmmaker, and co-founder of Meat Productions. His short Ada, which he made along with Julie, drew over 50 festival nominations and 19 wins. And usually he finds himself in the director's chair, or you'll find him in the actor's chair, or you'll find him in the background chair, much like Julie, who is also an award-winning actor, writer, director, hyphenated all the things, filmmaker, producer, and Steve's partner at Meep. And both of them together have been making lots of films coming up through the Crazy Eights system, and both worked on, again, Ada, which drew over 50 nominations, as I said before. And they are here today to talk about the Vertical series, their filmmaking lives, and all things regarding what the independent film industry looks like in Vancouver from their perspective. Welcome to the show, Julie and Steve.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for that wonderful introduction. Good to be here.
So let's just start from the beginning. How did you both get involved in this? You are also not just partners in this production, but you're also a couple as well. So how did you guys come together, and how did you guys all get started in this industry?
I think, funny enough, we both started right around the same time, although we didn't know each other at that time. We met on set. So I moved back to Canada from Mexico in 2014, and that basically was kind of the start of my film industry career. I moved up specifically for acting, and it turned out I was really bad at sitting and waiting for the phone to ring, so I started associate producing for Crazy Eights, which almost felt like a kind of film school. You got to witness basically every year Crazy Eights makes 6 films in 8 days. And so it was just a master class in what it takes to make a low budget indie film work, and also everything that can go wrong and all the ways you fix it, because you have to deliver a film at the end of that. So from there, I kind of jumped into more directing. I directed a number of run and guns, writing, been a professional copywriter, and so screenplays also came fairly naturally. And producing, I perpetually tried to avoid, and didn't work. I'm perpetually producing the necessary.
It's a role by necessity, not by choice.
I call it a necessary evil, which is probably mean to it, but it's one thing to be a creative and in front of the camera and coming up with story, and then producing is 90% emails and spreadsheets. So must be done. Yeah.
So we met 2015, I think. And I had already been involved in film for only maybe 1 or 2 years. And I first started as a PA in New Westminster. I got called down to help clear all the rubble out from Godzilla. He destroyed New Westminster. So there were giant blocks of styrofoam all over town. I got into film, and I did that gig because I had been doing years of gig work in things like mineral exploration and even in the fisheries. I was on a trawler once north of Haida Gwaii for a season. And I've been doing that because around 2009, I was in academia, and I had a long stint there. I was a sessional instructor and a TA, and I got burned out from academia, and I fled to do all these, I went up to the Yukon and did mineral exploration, got used to, doing 3 or 4 months of work, and then artistic creativity for a few months, then get back to the gig work. So that's how I ended up finally falling into PAing on Godzilla in New West. And I think that's 2014. So we met a year or two later, and eventually we put together in 2019, we did Ada with Crazy Eights. Julie had been producing with Crazy Eights for a couple of years by then already. And I threw in a pitch about Ada Lovelace, the world's first computer programmer. We co-wrote it. We stumbled on this idea when I was doing research because I dig around in the archives all the time. So I came across, I'm reading about Lord Byron, the poet, and he had his only legitimate daughter wrote a computer program in 1851. There's no movie about this yet. Bingo. It was that kind of idea that kind of fired us up right away. We knew that's it. That's going to be a winner. And it was a winner eventually. And I think that's kind of been our modus operandi all the way through. If an idea just takes fire like that, you just know when you hear an idea, that's going to work. That's going to draw in eyeballs.
And Crazy Eight is an interesting format because you really only, you get 2 or 3 days to put together the shooting side of the film. And Ada was very ambitious for a 2 or 3 day film shoot. I can only imagine just having seen it. I was like, that feels like something that should have taken about a week at least to put together. So how did you guys manage to make that within the confines of the Crazy Eight schedule?
Yeah, I mean, it's a period piece that's rarely done in Crazy Eights to this day. I think there's not too many like that at all. 1851, it's supposed to be London, England. It was December and we were in a heritage home in Delta in the middle of a snowstorm. So there were lots of challenges. But we really went all in on the costumes. Hayden Kruger was our costume designer. He won the Leo Award for Best Costumes for his work on Ada. We did scouting and looked for every little bit of cobblestones and bricks in this town, there's not a lot of it. But we always we want to do that kind of fantasy period piece genre work and always set ourselves that kind of challenge. So we did it in 3 days, 5 days of post-production. We also had Sean William composing music for a string quartet that we watched live perform in the studio as part of those days. So that was exciting. Always setting ourselves big challenges like that is another one of our mottos, I guess.
Is that where that period piece leads to, say, for example, a Pirate Vertical series?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you start doing these highly ambitious indie projects, you start realizing how much you're able to do, even with limited resources. And I mean, I think that definitely is empowering. It's one of those things that I think often people try to talk you out of it in indie because they know you're kind of setting yourself up for, a big job, a lot of challenges. But I think especially in this day and age, it's the satisfaction that comes from taking on a big creative challenge and meeting that expectation for yourself. There's nothing like that feeling. And it lets you kind of really open up the world of what stories can we tell,
Yeah.
So for pirates, they always say don't do boats, children, and animals. So we thought
and stunts.
Let's do them all together. So children on a boat. We had not too many animals, but
a lizard snuck in.
We did have a lizard.
And of course, sword fights and ships and drones.
Diving into the ocean in October and November.
Oh my gosh.
We always throw her into the ocean when it's freezing. But we always have a hot tub prepared for the cast afterwards. So treat your cast well is your other motto. Cast and crew, feed them well, have hot tubs ready if you're out in the cold.
Very practical filming advice.
You can spend no money on anything as long as you have a hot tub.
Hot tubs and food.
Hot tubs and food, yeah.
Insurance.
And insurance? Yes, yeah. There you go. You need those 3 things and everything else is just is whatever you've got in your pocket.
Yeah. So it definitely, I think, it's empowering for you to know kind of what you can do, period piece, ambition-wise, but it's also reassuring to the people who are, getting behind you on a project, whether that's an investor or a platform. It's just, you show them that you've done this before. So there's a little bit less stress.
A little bit less stress. That leads me to kind of my next question. You chose a vertical series, I imagine, and I'm maybe guessing, is that because you guys both have spent the last at least 2 to 3 years in the vertical series sort of format space as actors and also just on set with that regard. Is that one of the reasons why you chose the vertical series format for this?
So the vertical series journey has been interesting because, yes, it's been almost not quite 2 years that we've been acting in them, and they've really only been in Vancouver for, you know, even when we first got started in it, it was still kind of finding its foothold. So we kind of had this opportunity to be on a lot of sets, read a lot of scripts, vertical scripts, and really kind of get this understanding of the format that I think a lot of people, when they go to make a vertical series, they don't necessarily have that experience already. So it was kind of interesting for us because the point that we decided that we wanted to go and make a vertical series, we wanted to do something as indie does. We wanted to do something a little bit different than the usual. And it was a case where the vertical audience had been calling for different stories. One of the front runners of something that they really wanted to see made was a pirate vertical. The Princess Bride was like one of my favorite movies as a kid. Pirates of the Caribbean later was another one of my favorite movies. And very selfishly, I kind of was like, if they make a pirate vertical in Los Angeles, I'm based in Vancouver, I'm probably not going to get to be a part of that. So it was definitely a bit of a selfish, like, ooh, if we can do this, then we get to be the ones who get to go out and be pirates. So when I sat down to write this, it kind of was an interesting challenge because I wanted to create a script that was fun and delivered on the expectation for the vertical audience that had been, saying, oh, we want this. But I also wanted to create something that had, the appeal for the new audiences that had never, watched a vertical series, which typically if you're not aware as much of what a vertical series is basically generally they're about the length of a feature film. They're about, now some are shorter. So they're about, let's say 40 minutes on the short end of things up to, an hour and a half kind of is a full length vertical series. And it's called a vertical series because there's episodes that last 60 seconds to 3 minutes. And basically the format of a vertical series, it's feature film length, but it's not formatted the same way. It's basically, the best way I've heard it described is take a mini series and crunch it down until it's the size of a feature film. And that's kind of your structure for a vertical series. You've got kind of these miniature, the episodes are 1 to 3 minutes long, but you'll have a longer arc over 10 to 15 minutes. And that's kind of like the
10 episodes.
Yeah, 10 to 15. And that's kind of got the same sort of structure as like an episode in a mini series. And then it kind of builds to the next one and the next one and the next one. So basically it's very fast paced and highly exciting storytelling. Traditionally, the themes are very similar to like a soap opera or a telenovela. It's lots of billionaires, lots of surprise relatives and secret marriages and whatnot. And so that's been the leading, genres, I suppose, for verticals. And we wanted to kind of break the mold a little bit and do something that was a little bit more like The Princess Bride in the format of a vertical.
And things had been surprisingly conservative over the two. We always thought that we were always anticipating it breaking out into more and more genres as it went along, but it stayed fairly focused on the soap opera formula.
It was working for the streamers, and yeah. When something is working and it's making money, nobody really wants to be the one to rock the boat and go, okay, but what if we try something really risky that we don't know is going to be a success? Which is where I think indie filmmakers come in and make waves. That said, and I mean, the intriguing and exciting thing for us too is, if we were to go and pitch Beneath Crimson Sails as a regular film where we're asking for, the budget to go and do that, generally a lot of the answers are like, well, you need, millions to go and make that work and make that function. The budget of a vertical series usually it's around, 150,000, 170,000 US dollars
Right.
for, basically a feature length thing, which puts it at a much more accessible price point when you're an indie filmmaker. So it kind of was this opportunity to go, okay, let's make something that is full length, that is an actual product that you can sell, because it's very hard to sell a short film or web series in the same way. And so we were like, well, let's see how far we can kind of push things working in this format, which makes it a very exciting place to play as an independent filmmaker, and end up with a very sellable product. And in our case, it was, that risk of, okay, is there a space for a vertical series that is different, that is, a high seas fantasy adventure, as opposed to more traditional vertical genre. And we're excited to find, the response has been amazing. The fans, the audience has been thrilled with it. Also, people who've never heard of verticals before have been excited by it. And that's,
again, emphasizing that this was completely an independent production. We didn't have any deals with the platforms before going in, so it was super risky. And we're very involved in the local indie scene, and we got an executive producer excited, David Abu Safi of Generativity Productions, and he's kind of seen by the locals as, he's kind of the godfather of the indie horror film
genre.
So of genre in locally. His name is all over so many different productions, and he got excited for us and said, yep, if you're going to do a pirate themed microdrama, I want in. So he was our executive producer,
and then later we had Karen Slinsky come in and co-exec produce for our finishing funds. So
and so Karen, we met through Vertical World. I actually first met her when I was a werewolf king and she was the werewolf queen. That was almost 2 years ago. It was one of my first verticals where I was acting in it. And
this is one of those amazing things about verticals, is that's actually the name of a character, right?
Yes. And she went on to make, first of all, she made her also a self-financed indie or a vertical called Tides of Desire. Beneath Crimson Sails and Tides of Desire launched together on this new app called Movie Picks.
And Inverted.
And Inverted now, yeah. So we're on 3 platforms at this point.
And that's interesting because like you said, you guys were independently financed, because normally the platforms come with the commission or the budget to make the film. Like a platform comes and says, we want to make 10 of these types of films, and they're the financiers for this. So when you're coming at it, not only are you coming at it with a different kind of genre, but you're also coming at it with a different approach, in that you're now creating something and then trying to sell it to one of these platforms who didn't ask for it in the first place. Like, they're not the originators of the intellectual property. Did you have to kind of forge the ground yourself on that, or did you have any models you could follow for that?
No.
100% kind of new territory, because that is the thing. Like, verticals are not all that old, so a lot of the platforms come in and fund things. And in the case of Beneath Crimson Sails, that was just not. We wanted to have the creative control to steer things in a different direction, and I think probably there's versions of a pirate vertical that we knew could be done with a platform, but it wouldn't have been taking the risks we wanted to take and pushing into the different spaces with it. So it was never really an option at the time, because when we were starting on this was August of last year. Or actually, no, June of last year. And even in the space of a year, the landscape's changed so much. We have platforms now like Movie Picks and Inverted that are, more dedicated to supporting more indie work and unusual for the format verticals. But when we were getting into it, those platforms didn't even exist yet.
Mm-hmm.
So when we finished when we finished the series, it was funny because I was talking to Karen a lot because she was going through the same steps with Tides of Desire. And we both were like, oh my gosh, we finished a show. This is it. We've reached the finish line. And then you realize there's no distributors because there'd never been anything for them to distribute.
Right.
So the next thing you know, Karen and I are both, on the phone to each other lamenting as we learn how to distribute verticals, which, no one's ever done before. So there's no map to it. Distribute verticals to platforms that don't even exist yet because they haven't launched. So we were finding and talking to platforms that, they're working on their launch plans. We're, basically crossing the finish line to get the series ready to be their launch show. And so we've been kind of launch shows for both Movie Picks and Inverted. And that's how new it is. Like those apps weren't even live 3 months ago. So it's all moving very fast and it's changing very quickly. And I think it's going to be very exciting to see when it reaches the point from, verticals being a more niche thing that not as many people know about to them becoming very mainstream. Because at the end of the day, it's a screen. It's a screen that we all carry around in our pocket. And I mean, I definitely was one of those people, and still, in my heart of hearts, I'd like to believe that I still am, where I, when ebooks came out, I was like, oh, that's great, but I'm going to read a paper book I can hold up.
A real book.
A real book. And I still, don't get me wrong, I still love my real books. Our house is full of them.
Oops.
But if I am on, if I'm waiting in for an appointment, or if I'm, on the train or whatever, and I don't have a book with me, which happens frequently because, you're running around doing errands, I've got my phone with me, and my phone has my library app on it, and I can open it up, and now I'm reading all my books on my phone. Whoops.
Right.
So it's very accessible. And that's the other thing. It's a super accessible screen, Maybe everyone doesn't have, a TV mounted in their house, but they've got a phone.
Yeah.
And so that keeps it very accessible. And so it makes it a very interesting space, I think, specifically for indie filmmakers to explore at the moment.
Yeah.
And in the space literally as well, it's a learning curve to figure out how to fill the top and bottom of a portrait-shaped screen.
Yeah.
How do you have a sword fight if you're doing a pirate show? You can't have a horizontal, normal sword fight. You need to find ways to go fight up a hill, so you've got those angles and perspectives. If you're shooting on a bow, you can shoot up the mast and down the cabin porthole, and you're always filling that up and down space a lot more, and you have to think differently. And then editing as well. Our editor had a bit of a learning curve too, to go to figure out how to put in those hooks every 2 minutes, and episode ends and breaks constantly, putting in slow-mo and impacts things and all the tricks of the trade to go from one episode to the next every 2 minutes.
And creatively, how does from that directing sort of cinematography standpoint and production design standpoint, because you guys have lived in kind of both worlds, what do you seeing as sort of the fundamental difference, I guess, in approach? Because it's still storytelling. I mean, you still have to edit it. You still there's a lot of similarities, but are there some storytelling tricks that only verticals can do that it actually almost makes it necessary for it to be vertical?
I almost I don't want to say that only verticals can do them. I think one of the biggest changes in storytelling is that verticals are written to be very fast paced. And that's, they tend to be, when I say the episodes are, 1 to 3 minutes long. 3 minutes is a long time for an episode. 2 minutes, I feel like you're stretching it. And every time you have an episode, there's guides to verticals where it's you want to put in a hook to get people interested, and then rising, amp up the excitement. And then you've got a cliffhanger at the end that makes them want to watch the next one. And I've definitely had a lot of people, when I kind of tell them about verticals, lament this and go, oh, our attention spans are just in the, they're going to, no one can pay attention to anything anymore. And I'm like, yeah, but it's funny because, we've been through this era of prestige TV, as I call it, where we've had so many shows that, that take their time and they're very beautiful. And we sit in the emotions and we sit in, a lot of slower pace. If you watch the Best Picture nominations at the Oscars, they tend to be a lot of films that do a lot of deep thinking and deep feeling about the human condition, which is fantastic. But if you go back to film and TV in the 90s, and I always like to dig up Sex and the City as my example of this, because those episodes are, they're 25, 28 minutes long, and you're following Carrie's main A story, and then you have her three friends. So you've got three B stories. So you have four stories that are all linked together, and you travel the arc of those stories and wrap it up in 28 minutes. That show books it through story beats, and it is incredibly engaging to watch. And it was a hit back then because of that. It's, still a show that gets rewatched and referenced and remembered now because of that. And honestly, you go back to shows like that, you look at sitcoms, they had 6 jokes per page, or they didn't work. They weren't funny enough.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't necessarily think that our attention spans are tanking. I think that, we've been through this season of, we've had, slow moving introspective TV, which is amazing. But we're kind of hungry for fast paced, fun, escapist storytelling. And I mean, right now the world is a heavy place to handle a lot of the time.
The darker the world gets, the lighter your entertainment should be in some ways.
Very much so. And I think you raise a good point. I also don't think we're necessarily monolithic in our taste, because I think you can absolutely go and enjoy a 3-hour epic film or a 3-hour slow burn Oscar nominated worthy film with beautiful acting and set pieces and all these other wonderful things, and not feel like you are somehow cheating on that by going and watching something that is in the 1 to 3 minutes of episodic sort of vibe that's moving fast. I think that the two can coexist.
Absolutely. I think it's best that they do. I think, if anything, I think that we've had so much time and space for so much introspective that it's I wouldn't say that, the fast-paced storytelling of verticals is coming in and like undermining that. I think it's just, here's also an option.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, watch both, because life is richer when you fill it with variety.
Well, and that's another point we always emphasize. Verticals are competing with social media, with TikTok fare, not with regular cinema or TV or prestige TV.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's and that's the other thing when people go, oh, attention spans are going away. I'm like, at some point, somebody was scrolling on Instagram or scrolling on TikTok watching cat videos.
Yeah.
And they said, you know what I'd love? I'd love some long form content, which is remarkable, because have you seen cat videos? They're fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and you think about it too, is that even when YouTube first sort of came to be, cat videos were the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we were watching when YouTube first came out, was the idea of watching cat videos or watching, animals doing funny things. And that was considered to be that's what the YouTube generation was doing. And now YouTube generation is where people are learning how to make films, is where people are learning how to make this kind of content, and then test trialing out as verticals or as short films or as things like that. But then they're publishing them to YouTube or like movie picks or something like that, which is something that is brand new, but also seems like the same kind of thing. Like, we've had TikTok for at least a decade, right? So.
Yeah.
Now, a question I have for you guys with regards to the independent side of things. So are you licensing to movie picks? Like, do you own the intellectual property of of this project, so you can make sequels, you can go back to the world again?
Yeah, definitely for Beneath Crimson Sails. Yes. And I mean, I think that's an ongoing conversation, because like you were mentioning, when the platforms are financing and providing scripts, they have the IP. So it's something that's definitely a conversation as this all kind of moves forward. And I think it's going to end up being a bit unique to each project, in the same way that film and TV and such tends to be. And again, it's a question that kind of ties up with, where's the financing coming from? Who is the creator? What is the situation? But yes, with ours, we have the IP, and definitely would be excited to do a season 2.
Do you have the same kind of things with regards to residuals and all these other things, or are you licensing and then sort of, if they're successful with it, good for them. Hopefully they'll buy the next project from you? Or are you going to see anything more if the project does really well on that platform, you see a little bit of extra in the back end?
Yeah, the really exciting part of partnering with MoviePix and Inverted is that both of those platforms are very cognizant of supporting the creatives. And in both of those cases, there's revenue share there, so that if there's a hit, it does go back to the creatives, and so that's been a very big conversation point in verticals, because there are verticals that have millions and millions of views, and while that's very exciting to make something that many people see and appreciate, it's, I think, so important in this day and age that it comes back, and creatives can buy groceries and live in houses while they make the next great thing. That's how this stays sustainable, and how your favorite creatives can keep making things for you to watch.
Yeah, I mean, if you're profitable for a platform, it makes sense that that not just that you can feed yourself based on that, but that it encourages you to make the next one, because usually that first one is oftentimes, as I'm sure you've seen, that's a lot of that is your own sweat and your own money being put in to get going. Just like we tend to do with short films and all these other things, it's our own sweat and our own money being put in, our own resources being funneled in, and our own favors that we're calling in to make it work in the first place. And if you're able to get a sequel, or you're able to get more projects that maybe the budgets don't necessarily go up, but if they're successful, they actually return the money to you, then that makes everybody feel good, because they know there's an encouragement to keep moving with it.
Absolutely. I think you have to, otherwise, as much as you can love film, trying to make film happen while also working a handful of side jobs, while also trying to, live life, it does get to a point where either you're creating very slowly, or you're burnt out, and that's really tough. And I mean, I think there's this point where it's like, oh, well, you enjoy work, so there's almost a tax to that, where it's like, oh, if you enjoy your work too much, there's this, we don't have to pay you as much. And I'm like, okay, but if a bartender really enjoys tending bar, does that mean he should do it for free?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I don't think I always say that too. I said I love being in the movie industry. I love making stuff, but for me to keep doing that and to keep working in the industry, I also need to know that I have the ability to sustain myself on, I not just sustain myself, but be able to pick and choose the projects you want to work on, rather than having to do it because you made barely enough money to make it to the next one.
Yeah. So that's definitely part of the evolving path of, filmmaking in general, I guess.
Yeah, independent filmmaking in general. I think we're at a stage now where it's like, we can all work for less. That's fine. We understand that the cost can't always go up. Like, you may have a vertical series, the budgets might not increase, but if everybody feels like they get a stake in the success, if it does work, that could be also a very good, a good way to do it. It's like if you treat it as an entrepreneurial venture, and there's actually a chance to make something. If you make something good and it takes off, great. Everybody gets rewarded for that. If you make something and it breaks even, that's fine too. Everybody at least gets a little bit of a reward for it having worked. Now, you guys also premiered this at Rio Theater. What was that like?
Amazing. Yeah. So as you said, it's the first vertical, I believe, probably locally in Vancouver, to be screened on the big screen, and it works surprisingly well. Given it's that it's in portrait mode, and that it cuts to black every 2 minutes on average. There's 45 episodes, so 45 times it's going to black in front of a live audience. So you might think that's a bit disruptive. In fact, we went up beforehand to explain this to the crowd. We had about 250 people there, and I felt a little bit apologetic. However, we also, we had an MC, Jesse, who encouraged the crowd to be interactive, and that worked like a charm. It turned into a bit of a Rocky Horror Picture Show experience, where the crowd had all sorts of things to yell when we went to black, and all very encouraging. And there are little things that there's lots of opportunity to yell, tell her, or, kiss her or tell her, or whatever it is. And it was such a fun showing. Some people said it was like the most fun they've had at the Rio in a long time.
Yeah, it's funny because verticals are based on this fast-paced, emotive, exciting, simple motivations but big stakes storytelling. And it turns out that plays really well in a theater. It's fun to watch with a group of people. So it turns out that the best way to watch a vertical is in a theater. Who knew?
That's hilarious. Like you said, that Rocky Horror Picture Show thing, where maybe now it is more interactive. You're not just sitting there and being quiet for an hour. You're actually engaging, and everybody and people are understanding also, because there is a bit of everything is the stakes are high, and every 60 to 180 seconds, the stakes are high all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it lends itself to that. So that might be an interesting. It now becomes a thing that people watch together, not just on their phone. Even though that's where it initially is intended to be.
Yeah, very much so. So that's something I certainly didn't see coming or couldn't have predicted. And now I feel like I want those little breaks and more things I go to see. I want my episode break every 2 minutes so I can yell at the screen.
Oh, what we need is more intermissions.
Yes.
It's very interesting because verticals do have that private viewing experience where you're watching on your phone, so you're watching alone. So that does influence, the kind of content I think that gets made, where, the shows that are like your guilty pleasure that you wouldn't necessarily be like, gather around, family, we're watching. It's opened up kind of the door to that kind of storytelling, which is fun and interesting. You can play with more niche material with that as well. But I think there is kind of in terms of the theater experience, Beneath Crimson Sails definitely is something that you can watch with, a group of people. It is more of a fantasy epic. And it was interesting to see that emotive storytelling really work, because when you're writing a vertical, there's a lot of thought kind of put into the emotional journey for the audience. How are they feeling about things? And I think the biggest rule in verticals is you can't be boring.
Right.
The screen that they're watching this on is the same screen that their emails are coming in on, and their texts are coming in on. So many things are there, and if you are boring, they're 2 taps away from the rest of the world, So your storytelling does have to be incredibly compelling, which is something that even, as I'm working on verticals, I'm thinking about how it'll be very interesting to take this back to my work on feature films and such. Because it really does put this awareness on, okay, people's time is precious. The audience time is a gift. And as a storyteller, I feel like, you need to give them something that is worth their time. Now, does that have to be, a story beat, every 60 seconds at a pace that is so set? Not necessarily, but if they're spending their time, like, there's definitely sometimes shots in films where I'm like, okay, this is beautiful, but we're here for a really long time for a piece of the story that is not filling this time.
Yeah, some directors who came up with music videos and with commercials and so on learned that as well. Like feature movie directors, you find that are able to understand that pacing. That every second on screen is actually very important, and that you don't fill it with something that isn't necessary to move things forward. Now you can take your time, because sometimes that suspense and long burn is important, because it actually is necessary to draw the audience further and further, have them lean in a little bit closer and closer. You need that, but that has to be intentional and purposeful, not just indulgent.
Yeah, it's almost like a piece of music. Everything has to flow and work together.
Yeah. Is there anything you think you would do differently on your next vertical, like the one that you do, that you learned from this one?
So specific to vertical directing, We didn't quite do the episode breaks, like shoot them properly while on set. Like we had to fandangle things in the editing room to some degree, because what you really should be doing is ending at the very highest point of drama, cut it there, but then shoot it from a couple of different angles and redo it so that you can come in at the top of the next episode where you don't have to repeat exactly that action, because there is some repetition. Like this is what you just saw at the end of that episode, but you should do that showing it from a slightly different angle, slightly different, something. So we didn't do that thoroughly through all 45 episodes, and that's what I would do differently next time.
And I think part of that was it was a unique project where, the episode breaks are written into the script, so you know where they are. However, it's hard to check the script when you're in the ocean and flailing around. And so there's definitely some lines where it's, remembering it's an episode break to be like, what are we going to do? And like actually kind of really put a period at the end of that sentence and finish it where it's like, that's the end of an episode, rather than run into the next line. But, when you're swimming and it's very chilly, sometimes you forget things. And that's my other thing I do differently. I would not shoot swimming in the ocean and pirates in October, November.
That's a well-constructed note.
Yes.
It has to be 30 degrees Celsius outside at the least in order for you to make it work.
The linen shirts we picked out in August, those were less fun in November.
Oh my gosh. Well, how is it as an actor then in a vertical then too? Because you are kind of breaking up your performance over, or are you breaking up your performance over 4 or 5 episodes where that might have just been one scene?
I mean, I think as long as there's kind of there's a flow to it. So it's one of those things that you don't necessarily have to think super consciously about all the time, but it's kind of reading it and being aware of like, okay, this is an episode break. So this is, there's an awareness of, okay, this is the peak of a scene. I think it's interesting because I think there's been a few actors I have encountered who come to verticals with not aware of kind of the amount that it demands from you as a performer. I think there's been, a number of times where it's like, verticals, they're less serious than a TV show or a film. And I mean, yeah, like we're telling kind of soap opera style stories sometimes, but from the performer side of things, that means you might be doing, between 10 to 18, 20 pages of material a day.
Mm-hmm.
You might have gotten the script, a couple days before shooting because they were still firming things up on it. So you are basically memorizing and ready to perform in from the time you wrap one day to the start of shooting in the next, you're getting off book on these 20 pages because it's back to back to back. When you go to actually shoot, you need to hit that mark, because forget being off your mark and a bit out of focus, you're not even in the frame because the frame is skinny, it's small. So you kind of have to be ready to show up, hit that mark perfectly, deliver a printable first take, because the actor who can show up, get it on the first take on their mark with that's the person they're going to bring back over and over again. And it's incredibly demanding. And the other part of it is, I think the material seems deceptively simple, but the beats are very, very particular.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like doing comedy where you have to kind of show up and there's certain beats that you hit or else the joke doesn't land. And it's the same thing with verticals where there's certain beats you're hitting for this dramatized, stylized piece of work to work. And if you miss those, then the performance just seems very weird because you've got these, if the stakes and the drama aren't there, you just have a very strange scene.
Yeah, I remember actually talking with someone about acting in soap operas too, where, the General Hospitals and all those other things where you had to basically go through the entire episode in one day and you had to be off book, ready to go, hit your marks. There was no time for 5 takes, 6 takes so that you could get your performance dialed in or anything like that. You just had to be ready to go and hit everything right from the get-go every single day.
We always call it boot camp for acting. And I know I'm not surprised that some of the big stars, like your George Clooney's, come out of that world because, man, you get, it's baptism by fire. I've been, in a year and a half, I've gone through 53 roles.
Yeah.
The first, so that's, verticals have been a kind of a godsend for, and we hope they're going to last. Right now, they're looking pretty shaky because of AI. But man, we've been working actors for the first time
Yeah.
consistently.
Yeah.
I did 53. You did what, 26?
Somewhere around
there.
I've stopped counting, but yeah.
The roles running the gamut. I've played every sort of cop and lawyer and doctor and on and on and on, and werewolf kings and mafia bosses, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And plenty of stunts too, like serious. We have a stunt coordinator usually I've been thrown off the rooftops and landing on cars and beaten with baseball bats, etc. So yeah, it's been quite something.
Yeah, there's definitely in terms of the production value of what is expected. I mean, I've worked on a couple where they're riding on horses, they're shooting guns, and there's almost always some kind of a stabbing or a fight or something like that as well. People are falling down all over the place and driving cars and things like that. And you're like, and I mean, it is supervised under a stunt coordinator, but this is stuff that in the movie world, you'd be paying quite a bit for, and it would take a day sometimes to do something like that. Whereas that's just the first 3 hours of the morning is getting something out of the way like that. So, how many days did you guys shoot the series?
Ours was a little bit unusual. So we shot 12 days, but there were a number of those days that were like 3-hour camera days because we were lower budget. I didn't want anybody to have to I wanted people to be able to take their work and their bookings and stuff on other projects. So we had some days where, okay, these two characters are available and we can go and get this scene. We had a few 3 days that were short camera days because they included all of the travel to and from the islands where the boat was stored.
Yeah.
So there were...
You had to take 2 ferries to get to Gabriola Island. So that's also unusual for a vertical.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've done a feature there before. Yes.
So yes, so No, the ferries were the most stressful part of the whole shoot.
Yeah,
we were
much.
the last car on the ferry 3-4 times.
Mm-hmm.
By
seconds, we got onto the last ferry a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you miss it, that's it. Your next day is shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we should say we did 3 days up front in October August to make the first 10 episodes. But we had, right away though, we already had interest from the trailer. Mm-hmm. We were approached by different people to...
Yeah, there was enough excitement from the trailer that we immediately saw that, okay, we've got to, we were kind of going to put it out, wait and see, and then see what happened to do the rest of it. And the reaction was so impressive that we just were like, okay, we have to go and we have to shoot this right now, because it was at that time September, and we were like, okay, it's Canada. It's going to get really chilly if we leave this much later.
So we did another 3 or 4 days in October, and then another break. And part of this is scheduling around some, like our lead actor Nick Westaway. He was very involved in other verticals, so we had to schedule around him and a couple of other people. I think Lyra was gone for a while, but we had to do that and juggling cast, spread it out over then 3 or 4 months ultimately. And that normally a vertical is shot in 8 days flush straight.
Right. Yeah. You're sort of 4 days on, 1 day off, 4 days on, and then that's it. Everything, whatever you haven't shot, you're not getting.
Which is easy. You only have to buy Crafty once.
Yeah, it gets more expensive when you spread it out like that. Actually, yeah.
Well, yeah, your rentals and everything like that too, because you're spreading your rentals out over months as opposed to getting it all at once and getting that sort of 1 week deal or whatever it is on gear.
So you asked us earlier, what would we do different? There's a really good point. Like do it in 10.
Try it all. But did you have all your financing to do that first bit? Like, was that you were doing the trailer to get people excited, or did you already have everything ready to go and you just were like, let's just see if this is going to work or not?
It kind of came in stages. I think the excitement that we all saw from the first phase of the first trailer really kind of made us go, okay, there's something here, because the plan was to release the first 10 episodes kind of week by week, and see what it built into. But because there was already just such an amount of excitement for it, it was kind of one of those things where our executive producers too were just like, let's do it.
Yeah, David helped us with the first 3, and then with the excitement, he's like, okay, let's keep going and finish it up.
Yeah.
And that's doing it without really knowing if you had had them basically the financing to finish, or without knowing you had a licensing deal or the financing to finish it. So that's quite bold.
Platforms didn't even exist at the time. So
that's right. Yeah.
Leap of faith.
So what would you tell then someone who is just getting into the vertical world now, and they don't have that licensing, like they don't have someone paying them to make the project, they're doing it themselves? How would you get started if you were getting started again?
I would say that the landscape is very different now from when we started. Now you have the opportunity to partner with a platform that makes sense before going and doing that. So I'd say to go and do it completely on your own right now it's still very risky, and it's kind of unnecessary because things have changed so much. If it is something that you want to kind of jump into and explore, I do think that option of doing, do a limited length series. If you're going to do something fully independently and you don't know that it's the right fit for a platform that exists, you can always go and do those 10 episodes and drop them weekly on some place like Instagram or TikTok, preferably both, and kind of build that, brand for whatever, you want to produce. Use something as a proof of concept. But I mean, if you want to go and do a full length series that you feel is viable, that has, an audience out there that will want to watch it, I think partnering with one of these creator conscious platforms is absolutely the way to go.
And then you mentioned the AI part of things that's sort of hurting, or I guess the concern right now. What is AI doing to the vertical world then, in your eyes?
So right now, it's pretty much frozen productions in Vancouver. For the month of June, July, I think we're going to see, talking to producers around town, they've said maybe there's just a couple out there for a month. But we think it's going to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I think globally right now it's slow because there's this window where, I think these companies are companies, and they're like, can we make it for next to nothing and people will still give us money? And I think it's novel, but I think at the end of the day, people want to connect with stories. And I think I've been thinking a lot to do specifically, we tend to make a lot of fantasy, and I've been thinking about specifically AI and fantasy, because there's a lot of AI in, the fantasy type verticals right now, because people go, well, how am I supposed to have a dragon? How am I supposed to have a village catching on fire? How am I supposed to have all of this stuff? Fantasy is expensive. Which, yes, fantasy is expensive, but I think there's this very unique thing with people who are fantasy fans, which is that we tend to, and I mean, I'm a fantasy nerd through and through, and I think we tend to gravitate to fantasy because it does it strips the world back to a simpler time. There's generally, like, at least in the fantasy that I enjoy reading, people don't have laptops and cell phones even. It's very much a simpler world. And so to have AI recreate fantasy, the technological overlap is weird, first of all. And second of all, these AI corporations are not necessarily doing some of the most ethical things right now. And fantasy is all about, you look at the characters in fantasies, and generally it's hobbits going to trek across Middle Earth to throw, the ring in Mount Doom and save the world. Hobbits, not elves, not any these tiny underdogs who treasure, second breakfast and peace and all of these things. And that's who we're rooting for. And you look at fantasy characters, and time and again, it's the underdog and the people who want, a simpler life and peace. And so to see AI in fantasy, I don't know if it's going to take off, because for me, it feels a little bit like watching Lord of the Rings, sponsored by Sauron.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that, I think, is a really good point. I think that it's interesting to see what they're doing or what they're capable of doing. And you definitely can see where, well, they make a Coke commercial with all AI, and you go, oh, wow, well, that's going to, ruin the commercial industry forever, and so on. And you think to yourself, okay, yeah, maybe for the time being, it's going to make it less valuable. But some point you get to a point where you go, well, yeah, but I kind of miss the storytelling that went into that. Like I know that AI can recreate music really well, but there's something about going to see someone play a piano that is far more interesting to me than listening to a really an AI generated piano that might even sound overall better than what the person playing the piano is, like, might be more technically accurate, or create something, be able to create new works every second, like they're always able, like that idea of feeding the machine the story you want to see and having it just spit out the movie you want to see in 10 minutes. Which is something that people were talking about, is that's like the next wave, where we will just feed our own stories in and go like, but make me a pirate. And now it'll do that, but it will never be the same as having that story generated by a person.
Those flaws that really are part of the experience and the beauty of the artwork.
Yeah.
And the enjoyment of it.
I think, enjoyment.
There's definitely been people who have pointed out, like, oh, AI, you can do X, Y, and Z now. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't think any of us became filmmakers because it was easy.
Right.
I think there's satisfaction that comes with storytelling, and there's a cost and an emotional tie to it. And I think, it's the same sort of thing as if somebody said, why do you still eat food? You can just grind that up and drink a pill in the morning, and then you don't have to actually eat meals.
Yeah.
It's like, but then why am I here? why live and breathe?
So one of the responses that we've been seeing, and the last production I was on was trying this out in response to AI, is doing live action but having AI backgrounds. So that particular mixture,
right?
And so that's one response. And yeah, it is a question whether fantasy fans are going to want to see AI castles and dragons or real castles, and and more practical effects.
I think you can't beat the practical effects.
You can't beat the practical effects.
I think part of the reason why you look at Lord of the Rings, and that was a film series that got a whole generation of people, including myself, into filmmaking, because not only is it a timeless story and wonderful films, but you have hours upon hours of the making of, where there's lore baked into the making of this show. Viggo Mortensen kicks the helmet and breaks his toe, and Aragorn screams in authentic pain, and that's baked into the lore of that. And that's what story are you gonna tell about an AI? I typed it in and it spat it out, and
the
went to bed.
The speed with which they can produce AI shows now is just terrifying. Like, they're talking about just pumping out thousands of them, and who's going to watch these? We've been hearing stories from China. China is always a little bit ahead of us, and apparently about 6 months ago, they really, like most production companies, moved to AI already, and they're now coming out of it they're starting up many more live action productions again. So then that was a 6-month period. So hopefully it doesn't take us that long to come out of our AI hallucination.
Remember, we went through this, and this is a huge tangent, but we went through this with CGI. Remember, like the idea of CGI films were all these hyper realistic, like live action with CGI films, like the Marvel films and things like that. And there's an oversaturation of that type of thing where you're relying on the CGI effects to to bring the entertainment value on, I guess, like Transformers might be a good example of that, where it's like the CGI effects are the things that are the feature of the film. That is what initially looked really cool. But after a while, you just sort of get numb to it in a way where you kind of go like, yeah, but this isn't that interesting anymore if there isn't a cool story behind it and something that I'm actually interested in watching, then the visual effects don't mean anything to me. I don't go to see movies that just have really good visual effects anymore because they're just, I feel as though it's been done. It's all been overdone. When Steven Spielberg did Jurassic Park, I was like, okay, you did a great idea there, and it looks really good. But the story of Jurassic Park isn't in the CGI so much as it is in the characters that are there. And that movie that movie wouldn't be successful if it relied just on the CGI dinosaurs.
No, but there's even like an artistry in that generation, in that sitting and creating that. I think AI it completely and utterly deprives us of the happy accidents of filmmaking where magic happens that you didn't plan. And I think also, as an actor, first and foremost in this business, one of the things that is constantly, worked over when you're doing this is that your performance needs to cost you something emotionally in your
Right.
in your human existence. Otherwise we don't feel it and we don't connect with it. And I mean, I know everybody says, oh, it'll get better, you'll never be able to tell, but I'm like, watching AI acting, like, I mean, I'd rather watch people acting for the first time in their first acting class doing the worst, performance of their lives, because it's still human beings up there likely terrified to do it,
Yeah.
living and breathing and existing. And there's a kind of unexpected human quality to that. And AI, that's gone. It doesn't cost anyone anything apart from a lot of water.
Yeah. Well, it's the ethical side of it too.
That character is the pain of, oh my God, will we have drinking water in 13 years?
Yeah. You won't have to worry about jumping into the ocean in October if there's no ocean to jump into, right?
Well, it's going to be much warmer now.
Yeah, or it'll be, yeah, there you go. It'll be much more. Well, I still think people are still traveling to see the Mona Lisa in person. So I feel like there is an innate human quality to wanting to see human beings doing extraordinary human things. I mean, it's the reason why we don't respect the steroid era in sports, because even with that human performance enhancement, we kind of go, yeah, that's less impressive than the everyday human being doing something extraordinary. And so, I mean, there's a lot of consternation, and I mean, it is disruptive. And I think that that's the nature of the world that we're in right now, and the nature of the world we've been in for a while. I still am seeing lots and lots of money put into live action films.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. I haven't seen AI spark much joy at all. And like, film is a thing where that's what it is. It sparks joy. When you enjoy, there's joy somewhere in film. And I cannot seem to see a scrap of joy in AI.
I have zero interest in seeing like robots play baseball. That, like they might be fantastic at it, but I don't want to see it. And yeah, it's not as joyful. It's not as interesting.
No,
you're right. Like, I think joy is the thing. It's like, and the emotional, like we watch movies and we watch TV shows, we watch all these things to get invested into characters and to get invested into real things happening and stakes that feel very significant to the story that we're watching. And when you feel as though none of it matters.
Yeah.
Like watching a character die that you fall in love with die on screen is something quite emotional. Watching that AI character die on screen will not matter.
No,
and so why?
And look, they're back. They're still plastic.
Yeah. And even though it's all manufactured by, like, it's all a written, it's a script, and the actor didn't actually die on screen. That character is never coming back in that movie or in that series because they've been killed, and you care because you care about you care about the person.
And I think also, like, enough people cared to tell the story,
Yeah.
Enough people came together and poured something of themselves into it, and you can feel that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Humans will win, but oh my gosh, we're getting skinny and
We'll win, but we'll be drinking Soylent Green to get there.
Unless the robots actually do wake up and attain consciousness, then it's a whole other ball game. Because then we're going to have to,
then it's really
pay them.
Then we're living in a movie.
Then, but they'll have to vote. We'll have to grant them human rights in the vote, and we can tax them. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole other story.
That's it.
But they are not yet awake. They're not even on the spectrum of sentience. So I'm not sure they're ever going to wake up.
It's going to be a long time before we need to worry about that kind of stuff, right? Just everybody just close your eyes and let it all be good. It'll be fine. Well, thank you guys so much. I'll give you guys a couple of quick questions before I go. One would be take your turn. Whoever wants to say this. What's your favorite film? What's a film you're watching right now or want to watch right
now? Favorite film? That's a good question. I was just thinking I want to have a new. We often go on these movie watching sprees where we'll say we're going to watch every movie by Slater. We had a Slater Fest, so we go right back to the '80s and we watch Heathers and Pump Up the Volume and right through Name of the Rose and et cetera, et cetera. And then we've done that for many different actors and things. I want to go back to Willem Dafoe's movies. I'm such a big Dafoe fan, and I want to go right back to. I think I missed a lot of his earliest films in the '80s, but I love Boondock Saints. I loved him in Eggers' most recent Nosferatu. He played an alchemist. That's kind of a role I always wanted to play. I played Silas, the treasure magician, the mage, in Beneath Crimson Sails.
Almost an alchemist.
So he was almost an alchemist, yeah. How about you?
Gosh, Lord of the Rings. Can you tell?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I've got my favorite movie switches around a lot. Definitely Pirates of the Caribbean's on the list just because everything works so beautifully well in that film together. Lord of the Rings is just... It's peak because of the story behind what it took to make those movies too. So that's the one I'm going.
Is that the role you would have wanted to play?
Okay, if we're going for role, yes, I would have loved. Yeah, one of them. If they ever remake The Witcher again, and I am still able to play Yennefer, dream role, that one.
And what about you, Steve?
Dream role, yeah, I'd love to play The Witcher. More like we're big Witcher 3 game fanatics. I'm not much of a gamer at all, except for that one. I love playing that one. Although I have to say, you must be excited by the new 007 First Light game.
Oh my gosh, I'm not even a gamer, and I'm just like, I've been absolutely floored by it. It is. We will get into we should have a whole conversation about this one day. I am absolutely floored by every aspect of it. It is like being James Bond for 11 to 12 straight hours. It is an incredible experience.
Yeah, the trailer looks amazing, and just the people are talking about it as if it's the new GoldenEye for a new generation.
Yeah,
and not the GoldenEye the game, GoldenEye the 1995 movie,
the actual movie,
which just revolutionized Bond for a new generation in the 90s, and that seems to be what this game is doing now.
Yeah,
ahead of Villeneuve's Bond 26. Very interesting situation there. We're going to have parallel
universes and universes.
Now you'll start to Spider-Verse. You love Bond Noir.
Yeah, Bond Noir. It gets me very excited about it. It also is it's a whole new experience of I think you could do the same thing with Lord of the Rings and do something very similar and have that idea of a Lord of the Rings style storytelling game like that, where you can just get immersed into the world and I think it is phenomenal. Like I said, I'm not even a gamer, and I'm just enthralled by the whole thing.
I've always said that about Witcher 3, just because it's the most, it's just the world building in it is phenomenal, and the dialogue is so amazing. So I play through it. I barely go on the quest. I just go on my own. I get on my horse and I run off into the forest, and I can spend hours in there. And I will try the James Bond game hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you guys so much. My last question is, what would you want a filmmaker who, if someone came up to you today and said, I want to get into the film industry, what would be one piece of advice you'd give them?
Stay in school, kids? No.
I mean, yes, there's that traditional do anything else if you can do anything else. But if you can't do anything but filmmaking, gosh.
Because once you're in it, you're done.
Who I remember Herzog was asked that question, and he just said, you should, in his German accent, I would say to you, read, and keep reading. Just absorb cinema history, but not just that. Go into the world, and that's where the stories are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and because I'm big on world building and on lore, and finding those stories that have to be told, that are out there in the world, and not just in my own experience.
Yeah, I think I'm at a point writing a script that I always go through the same creative process where I start something and it seems great, and then I keep working on it, and I hit the point where I go, this is terrible. I should never, ever, no one should let me write anything ever. And then once I get out of that period, I go, oh, it's great again. And I'm in the it's terrible point. So I think my advice is, whatever it is that you decide you're going to work on or make, keep in mind that it takes so long to make a project from start to finish. Make sure you love it, because you are going to be staring at it for years, or, a year at least. So you better love it. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Love it more than you can. Yeah. At some point, you'll probably feel sick of it. So pick something you adore.
Yeah. You have to really love it to because it is such an emotional attachment to not just the end result, but to the work itself. And I think that kind of bodes well to what both of you said, which is just, you have to immerse yourself in the world that you're building, and you have to inform that with history, with philosophy, with art appreciation, and geopolitics, and everything else that around it. And then you have to be willing to suffer through the hard part. And suffer through the part where you feel like you're no good at it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's going to be days that you don't. There's going to be hard days where you're like, "What am I doing?" So it better be something that you love to begin with. So at least you can go back and go, okay, I know what I'm doing. Why I'm doing this.
All right, thank you so much. And where can people find Beyond Crimson Sails?
Beneath Crimson Sails. Beyond
Crimson Sails.
That's season 2.
It's the sequel.
Sequel
is
Beneath Crimson Sails.
Beneath Crimson Sails is currently streaming on MoviePix and Inverted. I believe you can watch the first, or I think it's around 20 to 25 minutes of it for free, and then it'll prompt you to if you want to watch the rest of it.
Yes, and a lot of our work is on YouTube. Like Ada is an 18-minute long biopic of Ada Lovelace from Crazy Eights a year. That's on YouTube.
And the Meep Productions.
Meep Productions, yes.
And that's MEEP, right? MEEP Productions.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Julie and Stephen.
Thank you so much for having us.
That was awesome.
Okay, so that's it for this week's episode of Off the Lot. We want to hear from you. If there are any topics you want covered or any questions you'd like answered, please email us at podcast.offthelot@gmail.com.
You can also find us on Instagram and YouTube. Our handles are in the show notes. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. And share this with your friends. See you next week.